Hello, you're watching TVP World News. I'm Jonasz Czerwiński. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is visiting Warsaw today. The visit was confirmed by the Polish authorities, who had previously kept the information about his arrival secret. President Zelenskyy's visit is scheduled to begin with a meeting with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, followed by a press conference. The next official engagement is a visit to Polish President Andrzej Duda at the Belvedere Palace. His talks with the two Polish top politicians are expected to cover further support for Kyiv in its fight against Russia. The issue of Ukraine's EU accession negotiations during the Polish presidency of the Council of the European Union is also set to be a topic of priority. Poland expects to open the first negotiating cluster with Ukraine. Also important in the context of the visit is Kyiv's first agreement in years to exhume Polish victims of the Ukrainian insurgent army during World War II. Later in the afternoon, President Zelenskyy will engage with students at the Warsaw School of Economics, a prominent university in Warsaw. A meeting of the NATO Military Committee and the chiefs of staff of the alliance countries will be held in Brussels on Monday, chaired by the committee's head, Admiral Rob Bauer. NATO's deterrence and defense capabilities for the Euro-Atlantic area, support for Ukraine, and the alliance's ongoing missions are at the top of the agenda. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte will deliver an opening speech. Supreme Allied Commander for Europe, General Christopher Cavoli, as well as Supreme Allied Commander for Transformation, Admiral Pierre van Deer, will also be present during the meeting.
The next summit in The Hague is about 6 months, 5.5 months away. And our objective is clear. We must continue to do all we can, all together, to keep all of our people safe. Our future security is at stake. Russia's war against Ukraine rages on. Russian hostile actions against our own countries are accelerating, with cyber attacks, assassination attempts, acts of sabotage and more. We used to call this hybrid, but these are destabilization actions and campaigns. Russia is hard at work to try to weaken our democracies and chip away at our freedom. And it is not alone. It has China, North Korea and Iran by its side. Meanwhile, many other dangers persist, from terrorism to nuclear proliferation, disinformation and climate change. So the security picture does not look good, but we know exactly what we need to do to protect it. We are already doing a lot here together. All allies have been increasing investment in defense. Thanks to you, our military leaders, we have robust military plans in place. The readiness of our forces has increased. Military exercises are larger and more frequent. And this is all essential but not sufficient to deal with the dangers coming our way in the next 4 or 5 years.
Russia launched a massive missile strike on Ukraine on Wednesday morning, targeting multiple regions of the country. In response, Poland scrambled military aircraft to protect its airspace. Military aviation operations in Polish airspace have now been concluded, but the situation in Ukraine remains tense. Ukraine issued air raid alerts throughout the country in connection with the attack. Over 40 missiles were launched in this attack, 30 of which were shot down by Ukraine, according to President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. In the city of Lviv, critical infrastructure was damaged. The strike also forced hundreds of Kyiv residents to take shelter in a metro station. And in his latest nightly address, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy announced that there will be no reduction in the number of specialists provided to the Ukrainian Air Force. He also spoke about a meeting of NATO countries in the Baltic region, including Germany and Latvia.
I instructed the Air Force to clarify to the public that the number of specialists that the Air Force needs to perform combat missions, our aviation, air defense and mobile fire groups, will not be reduced. Both Germany and Latvia participated in today's meeting of NATO countries in the Baltic region, And this is another region where it is clearly seen that Russia is investing resources in continuing the war, in creating problems for everyone in Europe. This includes Russia's shadowy tanker fleet, spying on European countries and their infrastructure in the Baltic, and threats to the underwater critical infrastructure. No less dangerous are the new threats from drones, which can be used by Russia to destabilize infrastructure facilities on the continent, such as airports or power plants. We all have to coordinate our work together for our protection, for the sake of greater security for our countries.
German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius has reiterated Germany's continued support for war-torn Ukraine after the parliamentary elections in his country. Pistorius made the statement during his unannounced visit to Kyiv.
The situation is tense. The Russian armed forces have made considerable territorial gains in the recent months, with a great deal of effort and enormous losses, with the clear aim of making up ground before January 20th. In the event that negotiations on a ceasefire do take place sooner than expected, which of course nobody knows yet, and that is why the situation is tense for the Ukrainian armed forces, but they are catching up. They are fighting with incredible bravery, with unbelievable innovative strength and creativity, and so the situation is tense, but by no means hopeless. Wait and see and hope that the transatlantic alliance holds, that the Euro-Atlantic alliance will hold, and that we will take further sensible steps to support Ukraine. And of course never lose sight of the peace agreement, a ceasefire.
The New York Times recently reported that packages catching fire at airports in various European cities formed part of a Russian sabotage plan. With less than 1 week left in office, US President Biden's team has been trying to send a clear message to Russian leader Vladimir Putin to stop these activities. An investigation from the White House revealed that the plan was to find out how to bypass security at borders and send explosive packages to American soil. The packages consist of consumer goods like electric massagers that would catch fire once unloaded. While the main concern is regarding cargo planes, sometimes passenger planes also take similar packages in their spare space. President Putin can no longer blackmail us with oil, said Czech Prime Minister Petr Fiala earlier on Tuesday. The country has successfully completed the upgrades to the Transalpine pipeline, doubling its capacity and ending the Central European country's dependence on Russian crude.
We can now say that we have reached a situation where Vladimir Putin can no longer blackmail us with oil, not even by cutting off our oil supply. The project is now technologically ready. We are able to ensure the supply of oil from the west to the Czech Republic. Increasing the capacity of the Transalpine pipeline will provide the Czech Republic with an additional 4 million tons of crude.
US President Joe Biden will remove Cuba from its terrorism blacklist as part of a prisoner release deal, according to the White House. Shortly after Biden's decision was announced, Cuba has made a statement saying it would release 553 prisoners from its jails. The agreement between the two countries takes place just days before US President-elect Donald Trump takes office. Trump reinstated the Caribbean country's terror label in the final days of his first presidency back in 2021. President Biden's decision will now effectively lift Cuba's designation as a state sponsor of terrorism, easing sanctions on the island, which is now suffering from a deep economic crisis. In the current situation, establishing a Palestinian state will surely be a Hamas state, said Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar when asked about the possibility of a two-state solution. According to the latest reports, Israeli and Hamas negotiators are nearing a ceasefire hostage deal in Qatar.
We are negotiating a gradual deal. The first step will be implemented during 42 days, and during those 42 days, if a deal will be achieved, we will start to negotiate a little bit more than 2 weeks after the beginning on the second phase, which will be, of course, more complicated. With regard to the issue of a Palestinian state, in the current situation, establishing a Palestinian state will surely be a Hamas state. There is a reason why the Palestinian Authority didn't handle or didn't make elections since 2005, already for 20 years. There is a good reason. And a Hamas state will not only not solve the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians, but will deteriorate security, peace, and stability in the region.
Impeached South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol has reportedly refused to testify following his arrest, according to the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials. Yoon was arrested over his ill-fated declaration of martial law last month, anti-corruption investigators said on Wednesday. According to the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials, Yoon has exercised his right to remain silent during a 2.5-hour questioning. Yoon submitted himself after more than 3,000 police officers marched on his residence to arrest him in the early hours of Wednesday. In a video message before his arrest, Yoon said that he had agreed to cooperate with anti-corruption authorities to avoid bloodshed, but called the investigation against him illegal. And in the aforementioned statement recorded at his residence, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol questioned the legality of his arrest, calling it unacceptable. He also explained that he submitted himself for questioning to avoid any violence with the police.
Today, when I saw them break into the security area using firefighting equipment, I decided to respond to the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials' investigation, despite it being illegal investigation, to prevent unsavory bloodshed. However, that doesn't mean I am acknowledging the investigation of the CIO. I couldn't help but feel it is deplorable to witness the way these truly illegal proceedings are being forcibly carried out with an invalid warrant.
State TV broadcaster TVP announced the list of participants in the Eurovision pre-selection, which will determine the Polish representation for the 69th song contest. The final choice will be entirely down to the public, who will select a winner during a live show on the 14th of February. This year's competition, featuring Poland and 37 other countries, will be held in the Swiss city of Basel on the 13th, 15th and 17th of May.
I've been always dreaming about Eurovision, so I'm super excited and I'm super happy that I can be the part of Polish preselections. And I just released my new single, Pray, and I'm gonna perform it during the concert, so keep your fingers crossed and I hope you'll like my proposition.
I've always felt like, my music wasn't necessarily the match for Polish people, and I was really shocked when I found out that they really like my songs, so I'm super grateful to Poland for that. But everybody I meet, and I travel all over the world, they always just say that my music is not meant for just Poland. I do think that Eurovision would have given me the actual chance to be noticed.
I feel honored to be in the top 10, especially since there were 244 applications. It is a great honor for me as a singer and a songwriter, especially that I tried to apply a few years ago and it didn't work out. So it's nice that this year I have this chance. I'm delighted that the public will decide who represents us. The public votes with their hearts. It's hard to say vote for me, a little awkward, but if you could, it will be my pleasure.
And with this, we conclude this edition of TVP World News. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates.